Zoran Mamdani, thanks so much for being on New York Now this week.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, anytime. So you're one of a handful of Democratic Socialists who will be joining the legislature next year. Technically, you haven't won your election yet in November, but you're in a district in Queens where a Republican just is not going to gain the support to win. I know that all of you have your own priorities, but tell me what's at the top of your list when you come up to Albany next year.
Number one for me is housing. I am a former foreclosure prevention housing counselor. I would work with low to moderate income immigrant families across Queens facing eviction from their longtime family homes. I'm also a tenant here in Astoria, and we built our entire campaign really around the foundation of housing. Because even before this pandemic hit, we were in the midst of a housing crisis. In Astoria, about a quarter of all Astoria tenants are paying more than half of their income to their rent. And what we need to do is pass good cause eviction, which is a piece of legislation that was proposed by State Senator Julia Salazar that would create the framework for universal rent control in New York State.
So as I said, you're a self-identified Democratic Socialist, and I feel like for some people there's a negative connotation involved with that. Tell me what it means for you to be a Democratic Socialist and what you say to people who don't agree with that or just may not understand the concept.
I think that a lot of people who are against it is because we might not have had the best branding. And I think that for a long time, we've allowed ourselves to be defined by others. And I think now is the time for us to define ourselves. And for me, when you ask what does it mean to be a democratic socialist, for me, it means to be fighting for a society in which dignity is guaranteed to each and every member of this place. And I believe that the state should play a critical role in the distribution of that dignity and the ensuring that that dignity is actually received, right? So what I mean by that is so often here in New York City, in New York State, we have a system whereby the market is allowed to be the major determinant of the distribution of dignity. And, we see that whether it's regards to healthcare, whether it's regards to housing, whether it's regards to childcare. I mean, there's so many different ways. And right now, in the midst of this pandemic, we are understanding that to be a socialist, to fight for dignity, it's more than just the big three, which are housing, healthcare, and education. We have to think about the ways in which people live their lives. So right now, can you live a dignified life without internet? Can you live a dignified life without childcare? These are the kinds of questions we need to be asking, and these are the kinds of answers we need to be creating, because there are too many people in New York City and state who are left at the mercy of the market, and they're being priced out of their own lives.
So when Republicans hear the words democratic socialism, I feel like they associate it with raising taxes to fund certain services and programs like Medicare for all, stronger public housing, essential services, community needs, things like that. Tell me how we could provide these services without raising taxes, because I feel like that's a question on everyone's minds.
I do want to raise taxes. I think that first and foremost, there are many taxes to be raised on the many, many wealthy people across this state. We have more than 110 billionaires here in New York State, but more important than that, the way that our tax code is currently set up, it is not one that is quite logical. For example, if we're talking about, the way in which we tax the financial services sector, a lot of our tax code is created in a time when the financial services sector was not as big of a sector in the New York State economy, or the way in which we tax capital gains versus income, or even the way in which we tax income. For example, if you make $1 million a year or you make $1 billion a year, in New York State, you're going to be taxed at the same rate as an individual. There is no additional progressive tax brackets as you go past $1 million. And even more than that, between 100,000 and $1 million, there are no different categories. So, am I pushing to raise taxes on someone making less than $100,000? No. But in terms of people who are making $200,000 and $900,000, I think those should be different tax brackets. In terms of people making more than $1 million, I think those should be different tax brackets. There are proposals, and I just want to zoom out for a second. We're in the midst of a crisis in our state, a financial crisis, and we're told that there's a budget shortfall of about $14 billion. And there is a proposal with regards to changing the tax code in New York State that would create just about that, if not more money in additional revenue. And so, I would want to say this is one case where Republicans would be correct. There are taxes that I want to raise. They would like to portray this as me trying to raise taxes on someone making 50, 60, 70K, which is not the case. what we need to do is raise taxes on those who have more than enough and should share a little bit more with the rest of the society.
Of course, that would be done by the legislature, which is currently controlled by Democrats in both the Senate and the Assembly. And I think it's fair to say that both the Senate and Assembly are controlled by Democrats who have been in the legislature for quite a long time, sometimes in the case of decades. First, I want to ask you, you're being elected to the Assembly. Will you support Assembly Speaker Carl Heastie in his re-election to that role, or would you like to see a change in leadership in the Assembly?
I plan on supporting any candidate that is consistent with the values that we ran this campaign on. One thing that I'm so excited about is that there's nothing hidden from plain view about who I am and what I want to fight for. I'm not secretly telling everyone I'm a socialist now. This is something we built the campaign around. And so for me, I want to see a speaker, I want to see a legislature that understands the scale of the crises we have at hand and understands that these crises predated this pandemic. So the solutions have to do more than just patch over things. And that is what I'm excited to support as a member of the Assembly.
All right, Zoran Mamdani, we'll see you up here in Albany next year. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to being back on.